Everyone, welcome back to the Namaste Experience and welcome to our exploration of the 15th century spiritual classic, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis. Now, what we're sharing here is a little bit different than the original book that Thomas A. Kempis wrote. We're changing the title from The Imitation of Christ to, I think we could say, The Imitation of the Christ Within, the Christ within you, not a person who is outside of you, higher than you, better than you, as in Jesus, for example, but the Christ, the life of God that is within you now and forever, to which most of us are very much asleep or unconscious of, but which is nonetheless the truest, highest, most vibrant part, well, not part, whole of who we are. And so imitating the Christ within means imitating you, imitating the truth of who you are or as you were created by God. I am as God created me. If I remain as God created me, fear has no meaning, evil is not real, sickness, pain, and death do not exist. This is the proclamation of a whole mind. And that's the wholeness that is forever whole, but which we are so often unconscious of. And so through these simple realizations, we become conscious of that which is forever conscious of us, of you, of me, of each one of us, forever conscious of the whole that is forever whole, inseparable. So this is the experience we are allowing. We're choosing. We're choosing the experience that always and forever chooses us. So what we're doing is we're taking just a few paragraphs that I've rewritten to amplify this key quality and of the Christ being within you now. And then we're going to share the essence of this every day for a little while and to see where that takes us. So that being said, let me go ahead and we'll begin with our section for the day. And it starts off with a quality and an experience, a decision that we are all called to make that is really the first step, and that would be humility, to be humble, to realize that on my own, all I can do is mess it up. On my own, I can do nothing. But if I realize my human or the weakness of my perceptual mind and not try to amplify that, which is what the ego is constantly trying to do, the ego within me, which is the smallest, most divorced part of me, the most set aside aspect of my own mind, tries to amplify itself so that it would be the most important. In fact, that's all the ego really seeks is importance, is precedent. And humility and simplicity, these qualities of the soul, help us to relax and seek only one thing, and that is the life of the Christ within. So this is what we are focused on. This is how we'll begin today. So let me begin by reading this. It says, do not place much confidence in your own mortality, and do not grieve if people oppose or contradict you. Those who are with us today may be against us tomorrow, and vice versa. For the perceptual mind changes with the wind. Put all your trust and love in the Christ that dwells within your heart. Put all your trust and love in the Christ that dwells in your heart. Nothing in this world will last, for you are a stranger and a pilgrim here. But when you are wholly united with the Christ, then you will find an eternal home. So that's the first paragraph. Put all your trust and love in the Christ that dwells within your heart. Now, the Christ, as we shared yesterday, is the extension of the love and the loveliness of God. Isn't that the most beautiful way to describe that whole aspect of who you are? Not just someone that we have told that we must pray to who lived 2,000 years ago. By the way, yesterday, if you'll probably be able to find this online if you look, or maybe I'll put this on an email today, but there is a picture that was developed using AI and the Shroud of Turin of what Jesus potentially really looked like. So they took the Shroud of Turin and then they used AI to actually map out with a as a photograph would what this person, presumably the person of Jesus, really looked like. And it's so beautiful to see that actual face that could very well have been that one who walked among us 2,000 years ago, saying all of these things, reminding everyone, each one of us, even today, that we are the extension of the love and the loveliness of God. It is we who put that wholly and solely upon Jesus of Nazareth, that man. But what I like to say is that by the time he came into this full experience, there was no longer a Jesus. In other words, there was no longer a split or separate personality. There was only the Christ. And it is the same for you. When we have fully accepted this, fully allowed the vibrancy of this experience to take over every atom, every part of us, then the separate split self that we have claimed until now simply dissolves, and all that is left is the Christ within. So if you find that picture, I have found it very inspirational to see my brother, to recognize my brother Yeshua, who is calling me to now recognize myself. This is so important. I'm recognizing my brother Yeshua, who calls me to recognize me and calls you to recognize you, the truth of who you are, who you've always been. So this is what these words from Thomas A. Kempis are calling us to. And I think the reason I wanted to rewrite them ever so slightly is to bring them into greater focus. Because I think we have come to the point now where we can see much more clearly that this is not something outside of us, but something that is the essential core of who we are. So let's share another paragraph. Why do you constantly wait for rest in a world that offers none? Good question. Set your mind and heart upon heaven and give only a passing glance to all earthly things. They will all drift away, and you with them, your idea of you, that is. So take care that you do not cling to anything that may entrap your senses. Set your mind upon the Christ within and pray without ceasing to God. I've always loved this call to pray without ceasing. In other words, to have this conscious contact with the beloved, with the divine, whatever words you want to use, have it be off the hook constantly. I've used the analogy in the past. Many of you have heard it before of when you were young and maybe it was your first major crush or the first time you fell in love. All you wanted to do is to hold the phone to your ear and just listen to that other person breathe. You didn't have to say a word. You didn't have to have long conversations. You just wanted to be present. And it is the same with the Christ within you, to be fully present, to be fully aware, to feel that presence. and to honor that presence in every holy brother and sister that comes to you. To know that this same sacred holy presence is within us all, the extension of the love and the loveliness of God. So pray without ceasing. Keep that connection conscious, that conscious connection, so that you always know that the beloved is with you every moment, reminding you who you really are. Okay, here's a bit more. When you enter into perfect communion with the Christ within, or experience a single taste of the love that Christ holds, you will care for nothing at all. You will care nothing at all for your own comfort or discomfort, but will rejoice in everything, no matter what, no matter how it appears. A person who is in love with the Christ and with truth, a truly interior person who is free from uncontrolled affections, can turn to God at will and rise above themselves to enjoy spiritual peace. A person who tastes life as it really is, not as people say or think it is indeed wise with the wisdom of the Christ rather than human wisdom. I think we've all seen where the so-called wisdom of our world, or human wisdom, I think we've all seen where it leads to arrogance, to separation, to competition, all these things that take us further and further away from the experience of the Christ within. And all this is doing, and all any truly illumined, awakened being is doing, is saying, turn your back on that world, the egoic world, the split mind that wants to remain separate from you, the truth of you. Turn your back on it all and look within. And then, of course, share what you find. Share what you find within. Choose to see this and to give this gift to everyone. I've always said that the quickest way to come into the experience is to simply walk around for a half hour and look at every single person that you see, every person you think of or come across, and to see them and to know them as the Christ, as the holy, perfect extension of the love of God. If you want to be awake, give it away. Give this light to everyone you see, everyone you pass. It really is that simple. If we would simply apply this truth, this practice, to choose to see the Christ within, as opposed to keeping our eyes closed and looking inward at the human self, the split identity, the ego, and thinking that this is what defines me. In fact, it's the exact opposite. This is what comes furthest from describing or defining who you are. It's like having one finger and thinking this one finger describes the wholeness of my being. The wholeness of your reality is exactly that. It is whole. It is not split. It is not separate. You have an important role to play, but you will not be able to play that role unless you come into a direct experience of the Christ within. And this is what we talk about every day here at the Namaste morning session. Come into a direct experience. We're not trying to be intellectual or smart about any of this. In fact, if anything, we're playful. If anything, we take it not seriously, but very, very in some ways seriously, because it's the only thing that we really want. This experience of our wholeness is the only thing that we really desire. So, Vicky, it is wonderful to have you back. I know you watched yesterday's session, so you have a bit of an idea of where we're going. And I'll turn it over to you to share whatever you'd like to about the Christ within and what we shared today.
Thank you, Brother James, and thank you for picking up this little book. Here's one. I understand there are 6,000 versions of this, but I'm so grateful that you're listening and expressing another version that's more helpful in the language we find ourselves today. But this is the most elegant, eloquent uh, set of directions on coming home to who we are. And just like anything else, unless we do it ourselves, we don't benefit. We can read it, we can listen to others, we can be with one another in that light, but it may fade when we're not in that presence. In order to get the consistency of it, it really is ours to do. And the directions are so simple. It really is falling in love, with Christ. And I have to give a word to Jesus. I have Jesus here in front of my dominoes that are ready to play later today. But I have to say a word for Jesus because, since I was a kid, and I do not believe it was only me, I believe most of us in this room have had a knowingness of Jesus, or many of us at least. And as a kid, I didn't think it had to come in words or visions. It just was my natural knowing. And because Jesus maybe completed his part first, or whatever occurred in him, the natural call from when I was a kid was, I want that. That's all I want. I want that. And he's just like the best brother. And all I can say is he gets to be alive. And I love using all my props because my whole life, my whole home, wherever I am, the car, the house, the deck, everything is a reminder of we are one in God's love somehow, whether it's symbols I use or pictures or all these props. But Jesus somehow takes hold in many of us, and we take hold in each other. That's why we come to this room every day, because we recognize that universal voice of Christ. It's one voice that we're all speaking. Jesus spoke it first, and maybe not first. Others spoke it, and he spoke it in a completion, in his role of busting up that spell of death and everything. He spoke it in a way that opened it up for all of us to experience fully anytime we want, if we follow the directions. And the first direction, it is pray ceaselessly, or don't lose contact. Whether you think it's contact with Jesus or Buddha, with whatever Christ's voice is, the child of God, love is the Christ voice. That is our being. When we lose contact with it, it's not out here, no matter what we do out here. It's here. When we make contact with it, it's the only place that really rest comes from. That line you were saying, rest. Oh, thank you, Judy. I see you've got your Jesus too. Rest comes from this connection. And it is the total rest of any thinking of anything outside of us. It's not that it's giving it up. It's just not there anymore. Has no attention from us, no importance, no relevance, because this connection, this moment of rest, this fire of love, it burns away any other interest, in case there was one. If you come with lingering desires for this or that, they kind of just fall by the wayside. And the fullness of it gives us great courage to go and be and do whatever this voice, this presence inspires us to do. We truly live by inspiration, not by our ideas anymore. We live by grace that inspires and then does everything for us, whatever it is ours to do. And then we're here, happily here, not in a world of pain and sorrow anymore, because we have an understanding of where relief comes from. It comes from this contact in here, so we can be free in time, wherever we find ourselves in the world, but not bound by time, not bound by the laws that seem to be imposed by everyone of health and economics and all the rest of it. We're not bound because we come and we are sourced from this connection. And this connection is the Christ. For me, the embodiment in Jesus really works. It just works. I just love him. I think he's so much fun. But I see that in everyone. And the way to give it away, of course, is to recognize it's already in everyone, whether they see it or not. As a kid, I remember thinking the lesson I got from Jesus as a little girl was just see the God in everyone. There's God in everyone. Oh, I said, that's easy. See the God in everyone. That's all it is. And don't worry about what they say or do. Don't worry if they like you or they don't like you. Don't worry if they seem threatening or not, if they're going to hurt you or not. Don't worry about anything. Just see the God in them. Everything will be all right. And it is. I'm all these years later, and I'm telling you, it is. But the directions and what that Thomas à Kempis gives are so simple and so pure, truly. They're totally fall in love with God. Totally. It's like fall in love, however you name it, what works in your mind. Don't worry about the vocabulary. All of that are symbols of symbols. When love is our experience, love is what we are. I read a great line. I'm going to read it to you from Ramesh. Some of you know Ramesh. He's a non-dual guy. He says, an ordinary person undergoes experience, while the self-realized one is the experience itself. I look around, I look at Artie. Artie's in this room today. Artie is 99 years old, radiating nothing but love. Because when we pray ceaselessly, and it isn't a matter of holy, on your knees kind of reverence prayer, it's an awareness that I'm with you. I live with you. It's like he says, God is my spouse. God is my everything. When that becomes so, we become the experience of love. We don't talk about having an experience. We are the experience. Just as Jesus is, not was, is the experience now. That's why he's broadcasting all over the place. Wherever you can have an eye to see or hear, you'll see a message from Jesus coming out of every pulpit, every church, even all the political platforms are talking about love and spirit and God. And because it's a direct experience, and whether we're having it or not, there's a collective awareness that we're sharing right now that is the only value, that is the only reality. Love and joy, they come together, they're not inseparable. So I'm telling you, follow the directions. We give up nothing. It's like all the things we think we wanted or want, they're nothing, but they get fulfilled in another way. As a kid, the only thing I wanted to do, I thought, would maybe run an orphanage. I never ran an orphanage. I had restaurants. But later in life, when I was whatever I was, 45 years old, 50 years old, I found myself in a house with 10 to 20 kids for almost 20 years. How did that happen? That desire for an orphanage, I let it go. I let it go because I was at that time following an inspiration to do something else, to do, say, restaurants. But that desire came fulfilled at a time when I never would have expected it, in a much more fun way. No work of paperwork and figuring things out and rules and all the rest of it. All I did was have a big pajama party for 20 years with 20 kids. It was one of the most wondrous experiences. And only later did I realize, oh, that is something I wanted to do. I wanted to run an orphanage. And here I was in the middle of one. That's how God works. He works in the most fun way, whether you call it God or Jesus, but what resonates for you, Buddha, Kali, what resonates for you? Go to what resonates, what's already active in your awareness, in your direct experience, and stay connected to that. That's all this whole thing is saying. I'm sorry, I realize the time. Let's give Calico a time. Sorry. And thank you, everyone. I love you all.
Thank you, Vicky. And before we bring Calico in for some last thoughts, I mentioned at the very beginning this picture that was made by AI based on the Shroud of Turin. I want to show it to you so you can see it for yourself. So let me just bring this up on the screen and make it full. So this is what AI believes Jesus looked like. And I think it's interesting that he actually kind of looks like the traditional version that we've seen in movies or in paintings. So somehow this image, this physical form has been in our consciousness the whole time. So I'm just loving having this picture here to look at, and you could probably find it on somewhere, just if you Google search it yourself if you want to have a copy. But this is what artificial intelligence thinks Jesus really looked like. So that being said, let's go ahead and welcome Calico for the last little bit here and see what how you would like to button us up and take us home.
Well, I love the Shroud of Turin and I love that image. And this is where, people are afraid of AI. No, this is the new use of AI, very helpful use. And I was looking at that shroud and I was thinking, oh, he looks like me. And it's like, and growing up, I loved God. I didn't love Jesus. And when I started A Course in Miracles many moons ago, I had to work hard at forgiving myself for many of the what I called Christian terms in A Course in Miracles. And I had a lot of judgments about Catholicism from my days of being a Catholic. And that all fell apart relatively quickly. And by the time I was able to embrace A Course in Miracles, then Jesus became a brother, totally, because he was just applying the words that he's sharing with us through A Course in Miracles. And I love being around anyone that's really applying this technology, because we have different conversations is all I can say. And I can't even put it really into words other than they're different conversations. And I just love exploring them and being a part of them. And so anyway, thank you all. This has been great day, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Calico. Thank you, Vicky. Thanks to all of you, whether you're with us live here on Zoom, whether you're at Namaste Village. I love you all. Whether you're watching this on YouTube sometime later, it's all happening now. The Christ is within you now, this very moment. And I'm glad, Scott, I'm glad to have seen you pop in there for a second. Anyone on Zoom who would like to hang out and visit with Scott and continue this conversation, we always do that on Fridays, so please do that. And for the rest of you, we love you so much. We're going to continue doing this next week. So have a brilliant, beautiful weekend. And we say together, Amen, 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 e punto, period. We love you all.